Thanks to the YouTube algorithm gods, I recently discovered a new channel, Doshington, an up-and-coming Factorio tuber for the most part. A pleasant surprise and subscription and bell notification hit later, I watched and liked all of his videos on different Factorio mods and self-imposed Factorio challenges. And as a result, started feeling that Factorio itch once again. Last time I played Factorio was a bit before its 1.0 release, and I got as far as building a rocket silo but never bothered launching an actual rocket. I did download an old version of the game just to explore this old save I still had lying around, and I can definitely see why I didn't bother. The base I had wasn't a very good one. Going from the release version back to this older one does showcase how much better everything looks right now. I would read some Friday Factorio facts from time to time, and I did see mentions of improved sprite work, better animations, better models for the electric mining drills and so on and so forth, but putting them side by side really is night and day. Even the menus look a lot better now, it's absolutely amazing. Now, I'm a programmer, or at least learning to be one, so you'd assume Factorio, being a game that relies heavily on logical systems and such, would be easier for me now, right? Well, as you can see, not exactly, but at least this time around I actually used construction and logistics bots. Looking back on the shitfest that is my old Factorio factories and the actual code I wrote during my recent internship, however, I'm half considering jumping off of this cliff here. But you can't. And neither can you jump into the water, so I need to find another way to kill myself in-game. I could get eaten by the alien biters, but that would mean they win, and I'm too petty to allow that. So I guess I'll build myself a suicide railway, because that's always a classic. But first I need to get up to trains in my research, which can take a little while, so I'll ramp up a production of my science packs, which requires expanding and more research to make that expanding possible. And when I do have trains researched, I'll need another production line for the materials to make those, because trains aren't exactly simple to produce. And those train tracks won't lay themselves either, so using construction bots for that will be a lot faster too. Gotta write that down as well. Then we also need fuel production for that train as well, so that's a whole nother zoning block to square away, all of which needs to be defended well enough from the biters on top of that. And then finally we have our suicide railway. And to make sure the railway will still work after I'm dead, I'll look up some train tutorials for Factorio on YouTube to see how it's all automated and such, and well, I'd better go get myself a snack and a drink for that one. So now everything is finally in order, let's kill myself through the power of ingenuity. But at this point it would be a total waste of effort, so I'll just continue finishing the game, I suppose. This is what we call the Factorio effect. Programming is all about solving problems or puzzles depending on the way you look at it. There's always one major problem or one major puzzle, which is the thing you're trying to achieve by actually building the program. Let's say, for a real-world example, that the problem is that there's a lack of communication between working people in the same field or within the same company. Then you build a platform that makes it easy or easier for those people to communicate, like Slack, for example. In Factorio, the problem is that you need to launch a rocket, but to get there you need research, and for research you need production. But production also produces pollution, which in turn attracts biters, requiring you to build defenses. Expansion attracts literal bugs. It's almost poetic. The only real limit on your expansionism are those biters, but even those you can simply turn off at world generation, so you can peacefully build up your factory with no outside issues whatsoever. Which can be fun and therapeutic in a sense, but the added pressure that biters usually bring makes the game a lot more engaging, a lot more challenging, a lot more fun, and a lot less like Cookie Clicker. In reality, Factorio is a deceptively simple automation game. You only have 6 basic resources: iron to produce structural components, copper to produce electronics components, stone to build heat-resistant stuff like furnaces and to make concrete, coal to mainly burn as a power source but also necessary for plastic production and other chemical products, oil for a wide variety of industrial applications, and uranium also mainly as a power source but also used in specific weaponry. 80% of the resources you need are just iron, copper and oil, however. The beauty of Factorio, and I suppose it is a beauty found in real life industry as well, is its tiered progression. The best way to illustrate this is by looking at the different science packs you produce and the ingredients they require. Automation science, better known as red science, is the first tier of science packs and only requires copper plates and iron gear wheels to produce. Copper plates you produce in only a single step, simply put copper ore in a furnace and voila. Iron gear wheels take 2 steps, smelt iron ore into iron plates, then put those iron plates into an assembler to transform it into an iron gear wheel. Then put those 2 ingredients in another assembler to make the science pack. So that's about 4 steps in total, ignoring the mining of the ore and fuel needed to smelt them. So it's a very simple, easy, elegant, beautiful science pack. Now compare it to utility or yellow science, one of the late game science packs, which needs flying robot frames, low density structures and processing units. Now I'm not gonna go through each step individually here because that alone would take like 5 minutes, but I'll just show you a general production tree and say that in total it takes about 50 steps if not more. I didn't actually bother counting them. This doesn't come off as massively overwhelming in game though, for the simple reason that you usually have most of the ingredients for the science packs automated already, or are at least close to automating them. Even the most complex buildings or items you make are still relatively simple too. An oil refinery, for example, just takes basic circuits, iron gears, pipes, steel and concrete, which in itself is actually one of the more complex recipes. It's not like you have to design an entire oil processing unit yourself or anything. That's what the mods are for. Building blocks upon building blocks. It all flows very well, kind of like a house of cards in a sense. It's essentially a physical tech tree on top of the actual tech tree in-game. Another aspect to the beauty in Factorio, in my opinion at least, lies in the same principle that games like Minecraft have. You start with almost or absolutely nothing and build up from there to absolutely epic scales. Factorio has a very clear goal from the start: build a rocket. To do that, you need to research specific technologies and use what they unlock to build out and improve your industrial capabilities, like we've already mentioned, but this usually takes place over a very gradual curve of time, meaning it changes in front of your eyes, like a friend getting older. It's only when you consciously look back at the early days and compare it to the present that you realize how much has actually changed since then. This is that flow I was talking about, which is especially present if you don't plan anything out ahead of time. What you gain in rustic appearance, you will lose in raw efficiency, however. Though efficiency isn't mandatory to actually win the game. The run I did for this video was in a lot of ways my first one, and I didn't really bother too much with looking up stuff like ratios or blueprints or anything along those lines. I just went with the flow for the most part. This is the reason why finishing the run took so long, on top of actively limiting myself by not using laser turrets, solar power or requester chests to get those achievements squared away. This made defending my base, and especially my resource outposts, a lot more annoying than it should have been, but I did manage to finish a rocket no problem, even if the biters managed to actually kill my nuclear power plant at some point. But that aside, originally I planned to do a quick vanilla run to get the juices flowing, in preparation for a modded run, since my interest was piqued by the aforementioned YouTube videos, specifically on Factorio mods. But then I realized I was actually pretty shit at the game. Watching those videos of 12-hour full bases with massive challenges to curb expansion and stuff, and nodding along being like, yeah, I could do this, easy, no problem, and then struggling to get a decent furnace stack for my ever-increasing iron plate needs for 5 hours, got me like depression. The most important thing I've probably learned is this: automate early and automate everything. Ideally, you'd even have a production line set up before you've actually researched the technology, but stuff like stack inserters, tier 3 assemblers, furnaces, etc. you will almost always need. So just setting up some assemblers for those and limiting a chest for it is always a good idea, that way you'll always have some as a backup. Basically, just build a mall. Let's hope I actually apply the things I learned during this playthrough to my next modded one though. I think that'll help a lot in the long run. The main mod pack I've had my eyes on is Space Exploration, which seems to be the logical evolution from vanilla Factorio, because, you know, you build a rocket. In Space Exploration, it seems that the early game is the game. as in the entire vanilla Factorio playthrough up until launching the actual rocket, is just a prologue to their interplanetary industrial empire. I think the mod page says it takes like 100 plus hours or something, but at my pace it'd probably be 200 or 300. Which is why I'm kind of holding off on it until at least getting this video out. At which point I'll probably do a separate mod review or something later down the line, provided my PC actually has the storage required for the recordings of those 300 hours. I once made a video on the subject of Minecraft being a perfect game, and while the video itself is hilariously bad, I do want to touch on the same aspect with Factorio here. Perfect games don't exist. They can't exist. But Factorio, like Minecraft, builds a beautiful framework for what it sets out to do. The systems in Factorio work seamlessly. The goal of the developers in making an interesting game about building up an automated industry has been polished to absolute Kino levels over the many years it spent in development. In essence, it's a game that achieved its goal, and the goal itself makes it a fun and interesting game. Yet even the developers themselves aren't finished with it yet. Aside from the various bug-fixing updates that dropped after the full 1.0 release version, the studio also announced that they're working on an official expansion to the base game, which will probably share similarities with the way those work in RimWorld, something akin to an official mod, possibly with some aspects of existing mods integrated into it, but we can't know that for sure until it's out. There hasn't been a lot of information on the actual content this expansion will bring, aside from a single piece of concept art, but since they're advertising it as having as much content as the base game, I'm definitely excited. And in preparation, like I said, I can try out some of those mods I mentioned. Space exploration looks like a lot of fun, and so does Factorio too, and if I'm not dead by then, Bionadons looks like someone's worst nightmare, biggest fever dream, and greatest wish all at the same time. See you guys on the other side, hopefully. Peace.